Hey there trainers, Alakaham here with some more Pokemon video magic, and in today's video I am going to be showcasing a team for the Hisui Cup that I have put together, and it features a couple of penguins. We've got Little Penguin, Prinplup, and then we've got the big metal penguin itself, Empoleon, and because those two really don't want to see Lucario, I have a Toxicroak for protection in the back, and we're just going to go ahead and jump right in to these battles here. So I have Prinplup on the lead, and we come across an Empoleon. So this is kind of tricky because both of us are doing neutral damage to one another with the fast moves, except for Empoleon is a little bit more bulky. So I am going to shield this first attack so that I can get off the Icy Wind. In retrospect, I probably should have built up enough energy for the Hydro Pump to potentially fake it there, because Hydro Pump still hits really hard. So I have now debuffed them, and in this matchup, Empoleon is the only one that has a neutral attack, which is Peck. So Peck does a decent chunk of damage. Without the Icy Wind, that would have nearly, if not altogether, taken us out. But now that they see that I have Icy Wind, I go ahead and throw the Hydro Pump, and that is enough to take out the Empoleon and get switch advantage. Then, of course, water types resist ice type attacks, so my opponent is not able to Powder Snow down, and I can get the Icy Wind through on that Frostlass. To reset their debuff, they swap into Bastiodon. That's fine by me. Bastiodon does not want to see any of the Pokemon on this team. So given that Toxicroak doesn't really have much play against the Frostlass, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Toxicroak to deal with the Bastiodon, saving my Empoleon for the Frostlass. So no need to shield anything here because Empoleon is now my win con. Empoleon is more or less going to be able to farm down. Like, I'm going to have to shield, but I'm still going to be able to farm down. So my opponent hung on to all of their shields, but that did not turn out to be in their favor for this particular match, and I was able to take game one in this set. By the way, Prinplup is not an XL. Like, you don't have to invest a huge amount of energy and XL candy and stuff to get one. Mine is ever so slightly under-leveled right now. I've powered it up a little bit more since making this video, but as you can see, it performs fine as it is. Okay, so my opponent brings in a Drapion. I'm going to run with the same strategy of shielding the first attack so that I can get through an Icy Wind. Again, I probably should have built up a little bit more energy there to throw off my opponent's sense of timing about when I could use what move. But to reset the debuff, my opponent brings in a mud thing here, Gastrodon, and I'm just going to go straight for the Hydro Pump, anticipating that they would not want to shield a basic Icy Wind, and we are able to land it. That almost one-shots the Gastrodon. They can go ahead and take out my Prinplup at this point, does not matter. That was really, really important because obviously neither of my back Pokemon really want to deal with ground types. My opponent realizes that the Drapion in the front does not really want to deal with Empoleon, so they are going to bring in their Honchkrow, and Honchkrow hits super hard. I thought about shielding that and trying to farm down, but I figured that Drapion is going to have a much bigger problem if I have a shield on my ground type. So I am almost to 2 Mud Bombs, which would have been super effective, but it ends up being unnecessary because I can just counter down. Drapion takes neutral damage from fighting type moves because even though poison typing resists, its secondary typing, dark, has trouble with fighting. You probably also noticed that this team really doesn't want to see anything that can use grass type moves, so my worst nightmare happens here when my opponent brings in a Cresselia. Cresselia does really well against almost this entire team, So yeah, I'm definitely going to shield up this Grass Knot here. I really need to make sure that I get an Icy Wind through, but I knew that I had bought myself some time. So a lot of people don't know exactly what Prinplup's moveset is, and they don't know exactly um, how they don't know exactly how many bubbles it takes to get to the different moves. So I try to disorient folks by building up to the Hydro Pump and then throwing the Icy Wind. After the Cresselia was debuffed, I figured I could tank one Grass Knot and then go for the Hydro Pump, and fortunately my opponent does not shield. Now I suspect that the Cresselia is going to be the hardest response that my opponent has to my team, so I feel pretty safe being able to move forward from here. I do not shield because I want to save at least one shield for the end game. So even though I had that energy on the Icy Wind, I just did not think it was worth it to use the shield there. I'm going to go ahead and let the Shadow Ball through. We can survive, even if just barely. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this Hydro Cannon. And my opponent does shield it up. Makes sense because they were one shield ahead anyway. And my opponent goes ahead to throw the Avalanche before I can farm down. That works great for me. I'm going to let it go and just trust that my Toxicroak can handle what's in back. Yeah, there were already two potential counters to Toxicroak up front, so I felt pretty confident that whatever my opponent had in the back would not be a third counter. So this works out really nicely because we can probably just farm down with counters, but getting to these two Mud Bombs is more than enough to be able to deal with the Bastiodon even when it has shield advantage. So Toxicroak was successfully able to close the game. So good game to my opponent. I was definitely very lucky that they let the Hydro Pump through on the Cresselia. Cresselia is a big problem for this team, but I don't see a lot of Cresselias in the Great League. There's a lot of folks who started playing after Cresselia became available in the Great League, and for those who recently put one in Great League range through things like trading are probably going to have fairly bad IVs. So anyway, I wasn't overly concerned about Cresselia. With a team effort, one can overcome that potential obstacle. Okay, so Frostlass, as we know, is very common in the Hisui Cup. So this is the first time that I found one on the lead, but I am very comfortable staying in this matchup because Icy Winds to debuff are going to be great, and I'm just going to keep throwing these Icy Winds to keep the Frostlass kind of off kilter here. Actually, when I threw that one, I think that I had in mind that it was part flying type because it was levitating there. You can tell it's nighttime when I'm playing these games, so it was kind of late, and I maybe was not as much on my A game as I would like to be. So I should have gone for the Hydro Pump. But that's fine. My opponent brings in Empoleon. I am able to come in, block one move, farm down, and come in with several moves loaded. We'll see what they bring back, or what they bring in. They did decide to bring the Frostlass back, so that's fine. I'm going to go for a neutral Mud Bomb here. My opponent gives up their last shield, and that's great for me because I can just bring my Empoleon in and farm down, and that allows me to save a bit of health on my Prinplup for whatever their last Pokemon is. And I'm very happy about that because Prinplup probably has... Ooh, that's a lot of P sounds. Prinplup probably has the most play of all of these Pokemon against the general meta of the Hisui Cup. So I really, really like Junior Penguin in this particular meta. Strongly recommend, even if you don't pair it with Empoleon. I didn't know if I was going to have time to farm down with Bubbles, and fortunately I didn't need to. We were almost at the Icy Wind. So one Icy Wind is going to be enough to take out the opponent's Drapion. Prinplup is also a nice option because just like its higher form Empoleon, it only takes 10,000 Stardust to add a secondary charge move. And Bubble does not take that long to reach even big, hard-hitting moves like Hydro Pump. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer that it doesn't have access to Hydro Cannon like Empoleon, but the fact that it does have access to Icy Wind is really, really nice because it debuffs and it works as a bait move, and it only takes, I think, 2 more bubbles to get to the Hydro Pump, so that's pretty great. I do come across a really great lead in this last match with Prinplup versus the Bastiodon, so that worked out nicely. I am going to shield here because Bastiodon's fast moves hit really hard, so if I tank a charge move, it's probably going to be able to farm me down. I built up to a Hydro Pump before throwing the Icy Wind to keep my opponent off kilter in terms of the counts, and then I threw the Hydro Pump, which took down the Bastiodon. I also threw that Icy Wind first because I figured that my opponent would presume that there was a Water-type move coming, and so I just wanted to show them an Ice-type move first. My opponent brings in one of the legendary Water Spirits, so that's pretty cool. I do not see those very often. And this thing has access to Thunder, which is very bad for me. My opponent brings in a Drapion, and I have a pretty good response in Toxicroak, but the problem, of course, is that we do not have shield advantage here. So I'm working really hard to get those counters through. Definitely need to get that last shield with this Mud Bomb. I undercharged a little bit, hoping that there might be a couple of HP left if they didn't shield. But my opponent does shield. That's fine. They throw an Aqua Tail that's not going to be enough to take me out, and I force them to throw because otherwise I'm going to get to the Mud Bomb, which they absolutely don't want. So I actually played that kind of poorly. With the Mud Bomb, I should have probably just let the Drapion take me out so that I could come in and farm down with the Empoleon and get enough energy to throw immediately at the, I think that one's a Uxie. So we were able to take that game, but it is, I think, because the opponent threw an Aqua Tail hoping that would take me out, and it did not. So if they would have thrown a Crunch and taken me out, that... Yeah, anyway, there are, there are several different ways that that final scenario could have played out. But I was able to win every game in this set of the Hisui Cup. I did not use any Hisuian Pokemon. They are actually not super great in this meta, but hey, that's all right. I had a lot of fun with Prinplup and strongly recommend using that particular Pokemon. If you enjoyed the content, I would love it if you would give a like, and if you're not yet subscribed, I would be excited to have you around for future installments in my little Pokemon Go community. Until next time, trainers.